10 most rivaled nations in the world. 1. Israel and Palestine. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is one of the world's most enduring conflicts, with the Israeli occupation of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip reaching 54 years of conflict. Various attempts have been made to resolve the conflict as part of the Israeli-Palestinian peace process. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict has its roots in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, with the birth of major nationalist movements among the Jews and among the Arabs, both geared towards attaining sovereignty for their people in the Middle East. The recent Israeli-Palestinian conflict commenced on the 10th of May 2021, though disturbances took place earlier, and continued until a ceasefire came into effect on the 21st of May. It was marked by protests and police riot control, rocket attacks on Israel by Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and Israeli airstrikes targeting the Gaza Strip. The crisis was triggered on the 6th of May, when Palestinians began protests in East Jerusalem over an anticipated decision of the Supreme Court of Israel on the eviction of 6 Palestinian families in Sheikh Jarrah. 2. United States and Russia. The Cold War was a period of geopolitical tension between the United States and the Soviet Union and their respective allies, the Western Bloc and the Eastern Bloc, which began following World War and ended during the 1991 dissolution of the Soviet Union, the 26th of December 1991. The conflict was based around the ideological and geopolitical struggle for global influence by these two superpowers, following their temporary alliance and victory against Nazi Germany in 1945. Aside from the nuclear arsenal development and conventional military deployment, the struggle for dominance was expressed via indirect means such as psychological warfare, propaganda campaigns, espionage, far-reaching embargoes, rivalry at sports events and technological competitions such as the space race. The relationship was generally warm under the Russian President Boris Yeltsin, 1991 to 1999, until the NATO bombing of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia in the spring of 1999, and has since deteriorated significantly. In 2014, relations greatly deteriorated further due to the crisis in Ukraine, Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014, differences regarding Russian military intervention in the Syrian civil war, and from the end of 2016 over Russia's interference in the 2016 US elections and alleged interference in the 2020 elections. Mutual sanctions imposed in 2014 remain in place. Even after the Cold War, tensions still persist between the US and the Russian Federation. 3. India and Pakistan. Since the partition of British India in 1947 and subsequent creation of the Dominions of India and Pakistan, the two countries have been involved in a number of wars, conflicts, and military standoffs. A long-running dispute over Kashmir and cross-border terrorism have been the predominant cause of conflict between the two states, with the exception of the Indo-Pakistani War of 1971, which occurred as a direct result of hostilities stemming from the Bangladesh Liberation War in erstwhile East Pakistan, now Bangladesh. Today, both sides possess a large number of nuclear weapons, largely in response to one another. According to many experts, the threat of nuclear war between India and Pakistan is the likeliest in the world. 4. North Korea and South Korea. Formerly a single nation that was annexed by Japan in 1910, the Korean peninsula has been divided into North Korea and South Korea since the end of World War II in 1945. The two countries engaged in the Korean War from 1950 to 1953, which ended in an armistice agreement but without a peace treaty. North Korea is a one-party totalitarian state run by the Kim dynasty. South Korea was formerly governed by a succession of military dictatorships until democratization in 1987 when it held direct elections. In 2000, President Kim Dae-jung became the first president of South Korea to visit North Korea, 55 years after the peninsula was divided. North Korea invaded the South on the 25th of June 1950, and swiftly overran most of the country. In September 1950, the United Nations force, led by the United States, intervened to defend the South, and advanced into North Korea. As they neared the border with China, Chinese forces intervened on behalf of North Korea, shifting the balance of the war again. Both opposing governments considered themselves to be the government of the whole of Korea, and both saw the division as temporary. 5. China and Japan. While a number of these rivalries have a long history, few are quite as extensive as this one, with the first recorded battle between China and Japan taking place in 663. In more recent times, there are a number of reasons that distrust is high between these countries, as from roughly 1870 to the end of World War II, the Japanese Empire annexed and occupied vast areas of China. During the invasion, the Japanese Empire committed numerous war crimes, including the use of chemical weapons, and mass murder and rape in Nanking. Tensions remain today, with issues including territorial disputes, and Chinese accusations that Japan fails to acknowledge past atrocities. Tension between China and Japan can be traced back to First Sino-Japanese War, conflict between Japan and China in 1894 to 1895 that marked the emergence of Japan as a major world power and demonstrated the weakness of the Chinese Empire. The Second Sino-Japanese War 1937 to 1945 made up the Chinese theater of the wider Pacific theater of the Second World War. The beginning of the war is conventionally dated to the Marco Polo Bridge incident on 7 July 1937, when a dispute between Japanese and Chinese troops in Peking escalated into a full-scale invasion. This full-scale war between the Chinese and the Empire of Japan is often regarded as the beginning of World War II in Asia. 6. Germany and France. Conflict between this two can be dated to Franco-German War, also called Franco-Prussian War, July 19, 1870 to May 10, 1871, war in which a coalition of German states led by Prussia defeated France. The war marked the end of French hegemony in continental Europe and resulted in the creation of a unified Germany. The Battle of France, the 10th of May to the 25th of June 1940, also known as the Fall of France, was the German invasion of France, Belgium, Luxembourg and the Netherlands during the Second World War. On 3 September 1939, France had declared war on Germany, following the German invasion of Poland. In early September 1939, France began the limited Saar offensive. By mid-October, the French had withdrawn to their start lines. The Germans invaded Belgium, Luxembourg and the Netherlands on 10 May, Italy entered the war on 10 June 1940 and German forces defeated the Allies on 25 June. France and the Low Countries were conquered, ending land operations on the Western Front until the Normandy landings on 6 June 1944. As the result of their shared border, a number of key conflicts have erupted between these neighbors. However, France and Germany's relationship has definitely improved since then. 7. United Kingdom and Ireland. In April 1916, Irish Republicans launched the Easter Rising against British rule and proclaimed an Irish Republic. Although it was crushed after a week of fighting, the rising and the British response led to greater popular support for Irish independence. In the December 1918 election, Republican Party Sinn Féin won a landslide victory in Ireland. On 21 January 1919 they formed a breakaway government, Dáil Éireann, and declared Irish independence. The Irish War of Independence or Anglo-Irish War was a guerrilla war fought in Ireland from 1919 to 1921 between the Irish Republican Army, IRA, the Army of the Irish Republic, and British forces, the British Army, along with the quasi-military Royal Irish Constabulary, RIC, and its paramilitary forces the Auxiliaries and Ulster Special Constabulary, USC. It was part of the Irish Revolutionary period. Today, Northern Ireland remain with United Kingdom, while Republic of Ireland is a sovereign nation. This did not completely end tensions, however, as issues including Brexit and the status of Northern Ireland still divide the nations today. 8. Turkey and Greece. Relations between the Greek and the Turkish states have been marked by alternating periods of mutual hostility and reconciliation ever since Greece won its independence from the Ottoman Empire in 1830. Since then, the two countries have faced each other in four major wars: the Greco-Turkish War 1897, the First Balkan War 1912–1913, the First World War 1914–1918, including the Greek Genocide 1913–1922, and finally the Greco-Turkish War 1919–1922, which were followed by the Greco-Turkish population exchange and a period of friendly relations in the 1930s and 1940s. Both countries entered NATO in 1952. Relations deteriorated again after the 1950s due to the 1955 Istanbul pogrom, the Cyprus issue, and the expulsion of the Istanbul Greeks in the 1960s, the 1974 Cypriot coup d'état, immediately followed by the Turkish invasion of Cyprus in 1974, the Emir-Kardak military crisis in 1996 and subsequent military confrontations over the Aegean dispute. A period of relative normalization began after 1999 with the so-called earthquake diplomacy, which notably led to a change in the previously firmly negative stance of the Greek government on the issue of the accession of Turkey to the European Union. As of 2021, military tensions have risen again due to conflicts over maritime zones in the Aegean and Eastern Mediterranean. 9. Iran and Saudi Arabia. Iran and Saudi Arabia have had no diplomatic relations following an attack on the Saudi embassy in Tehran in January 2016 after Saudi Arabia executed Sheikh Nimr al-Nimr, a Shia cleric. Bilateral relations between the countries have been strained over several geopolitical issues such as the interpretations of Islam, aspirations for leadership of the Islamic world, oil export policy and relations with the United States and other Western countries. This has deteriorated to what is called the Iran-Saudi Arabia proxy conflict. The Iran-Saudi Arabia proxy conflict, sometimes also referred to as the Middle Eastern Cold War, is the ongoing struggle for influence in the Middle East and surrounding regions between Iran and Saudi Arabia. The two countries have provided varying degrees of support to opposing sides in nearby conflicts, including the civil wars in Syria and Yemen. The rivalry also extends to disputes in Bahrain, Lebanon, Qatar, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Nigeria, and Morocco, as well as broader competition in North and East Africa, parts of South Asia, Central Asia, Southeast Asia, the Balkans, and the Caucasus. Finally, France and United Kingdom. The historical ties between France and the UK, and the countries preceding them, are long and complex, including conquest, wars, and alliances at various points in history. The Roman era saw both areas largely conquered by Rome, whose fortifications exist in both countries to this day. However, the language barrier remained. The Norman conquest of England in 1066 decisively shaped English history, as well as the English language. In the Middle Ages, France and England were often bitter enemies, with both nations' monarchs claiming control over France, while Scotland was usually allied with France until the union of the crowns. The last major conflict between the two were the Napoleonic Wars 1793 to 1815, in which coalitions of European powers, financed and usually led by London, fought a series of wars against the First French Empire and its client states, culminating in the defeat of Napoleon in 1815. Thanks for watching.